Well, it's glad to see that you all made it back. I mean, even though by the time this drops, you've only probably seen the first episode, but if you did, you've made it back here, and that shows that we're doing the right thing. So, without further ado, this is episode 2. As usual, I want to introduce this amazing guy here on my left. Licensed psychotherapist.
Fully qualified, please, not licensed.
Look at that. I always get something wrong, but it's always a good thing. Like, you know what I mean? Okay. So he's a fully qualified psychotherapist.
Hopefully soon to be accredited. Fingers crossed.
We don't cross fingers because we don't believe in luck. We believe in if we prepare enough, then it just happens the way it's supposed to happen. This guy's going to be accredited this time in what month?
Nah, takes about 8 months.
Check it out. I'm severely underestimating.
Yeah, no, it's a long process, isn't it?
Yeah.
But there's a backlog and all kinds of stuff, so it takes about 8 months. So
some politics.
yeah.
Well, he's the expert in the room, the guy that knows the most and is able to show you the mirror and how you can kind of help you discover yourself and the things that you're going through and even come to terms with your trauma. It's the man, the myth, the legend, Anthony Bedders, A to B Therapy. What's going on, my man?
Hi, everyone. Welcome back. What are you saying, Hez?
Not much, man, but for those that don't know me, I'm the self-proclaimed voice of the streets, the professional. So heavy on the self-proclaimed. Once again, here to kind of guide you through your journey, helping you unlearn everything so you can relearn everything so you can become a better person. My name is Hez, and it's always a pleasure to, kick out a little bit of content for you guys that are tired of the regular conversations and so on and so forth. So with that said, how was your week, my man?
Do you know what? It's been a bit difficult, to start of the week. I won't get into it, the whys. Obviously, you know the whys, but
Protect your peace.
yeah. But it's become more positive towards the end of the week and the start of where we are today. So you know what? Sometimes we just go through stuff, and it's like, how do you manage and still conduct yourself through these times? Now, for me, it's a bit counterproductive because, I help people, try and help people on a daily basis. Yeah. And then sometimes I will forget to do the stuff what I'm telling other people to do.
Yeah.
And it's so easy to forget the basics when it comes to helping yourself, making sure that you're eating right, going to the gym, making sure that you are checking in with people, having certain conversations, doing X, Y, and Z to make yourself feel better. But sometimes I do forget that side of things, and sometimes I step back into a bit of a hole, I would say, and then I kind of just stay stagnant for a bit until I just snap myself out of it. Luckily for me, it's not as long as it used to be.
Yeah.
Where now it's a day, a couple hours or whatever.
Would you say that you've learned that in your, as therapy kind of got you there, where you've kind of actually learned, well, actually, there's things that I could do to kind of help me get back into the swing of things instead of just sitting under a rock and hoping it blows away?
Yeah, therapy's definitely helped me manage that side of things. Because, like I said, there'll be times where I'll be embarrassed, be ashamed to share my experience of what I'm going through. And I would think that other people will assume that it's not worthy of being upset about or not talking about. And the thing is, in life, nobody can tell you about your experience of a situation. How you feel about it, that's your experience of it. So I can't tell you what you're going through. You shouldn't gauge it as a 10. But what you've got to do is try and not be sucked into that way of thinking for too long before it becomes 100.
Yeah.
Or you're just adding stuff on without. So sometimes you just need to get out of that place as quick as possible. So therapy will help you with coping mechanisms, skills to move forward. But it does take time.
Yeah. I mean, and in some ways it helps kind of having people around you as such that will notice the difference in you, or even in those passing conversations won't just... So like with me and you, right? I knew you had a tough week. but that came as a result of me contacting you and saying, well, you know, before we talk anything like that, how are you? And as a result of that little one, how are you, it puts into perspective something that you have said a lot on these platforms is talk. Say something to somebody. Like, you don't know how it's going to come across or how it's going to be reacted to, but at least you are making people that care about you aware that maybe things aren't what they seem on the outside, or confirm probably what they already think.
Yeah.
Like, and I've had that feeling before where, like, I feel a disturbance in the force and I'm thinking to myself, which one of my peoples are going through it right now?
Something's not right.
Yeah, something's not right.
And I think you'll never know until that person steps forward and decides to have that conversation, which is the tricky part in all this. It is, you know what, Hez has reached out. Why not just tell him what's going on?
Yeah.
Or even if it's not everything, just a little bit. Just to be able to gauge your response and share what I'm going through at that moment in time. And a lot of the times, no disrespect, you won't be able to do anything.
For real.
That extra ear is a lot. It is a lot.
That's a well-known barrier, though. Like, you hear, like, rappers say it and stuff like that. It's like, well, like, what are you asking me if I'm okay for? Like, what kind of answer do you want from that? Or what good am I going to get from saying what's wrong with me or what's happening in my life when you are not in a position to change what's happening? And it's like, okay, I get where that comes from, but at the same time, like, what you want to be changed from that situation and what you would expect someone to do. So if you're, like, in debt or something, and you say, right, I'm in debt, I'm miserable about it, right, none of these men are going to pay my bills for me, or you're not directly going to pay my bills for me, so what am I telling you for? You're not going to change anything. However, what you don't know is that by not saying something, not only are you sitting on that and it's resting on your chest and you're potentially going to burst because it's all over the place, or you don't know what that person could do. Like, I've spoken to people where they've said, you know, my boy was struggling, and as a result, if he'd have said something to us, we could have literally banded together, because we're all relatively reasonably successful guys. If debt was the problem, we could have figured something out. Even little things like that, because they would have said something, and as a result, it then led to them changing that situation, which kind of rubs out the stereotype.
I think that might be part of the issue, though, in terms of the person asking, is that you never want to be the burden. But what I'm thinking is, if we talk about it, and I'm already knowing that you can't fix the problem, but what you can do is help me lighten the weight that I'm carrying because I'm now sharing, even if I know directly you can't fix the problem, but with that less weight, that means I can then start thinking about different ways to fix my problems, because I'm not bound by the heaviness of what is on my mind.
That's it. Even like you said, just having somebody that may know how to help get around that situation. Like, you don't have to be a charity case, but if you're about to get evicted for something and I work in property, it makes so much sense that I kind of tell you how to navigate in this situation to make that situation light, or for you to be prepared for what's happening so that no further damage is done. And you have to speak to people to know that. Like, it has to happen. But I get it. Like, when those things happen, when we get depressed, when some things take a dip, you go so far into your shell, because really, and some people have said this before, poor mental health is almost like a very selfish condition. And even sometimes the solution can be also equally as selfish, but in a different way, because you have to then consider yourself and not all the things that have potentially caused you to be backed into this corner. So no, I see why it's mad important. And to be fair, like, if therapy opens that up, then people do need to really start looking into it a little bit more. But yeah, to kind of get back on pace of what kind of like I wanted to bring to the table today. So in case you're living under a rock, one of probably the biggest icons of probably our generation in Sean Puffy Combs is going through the ringer at the minute, quite rightly so, in all fairness. But He's, you know, being brought up on charges, and it's probably important to say that it's more over the racketeering and the human trafficking element. But in this case, it's been kind of blown open to kind of expose him and his character in order to kind of build their case, which, in all fairness, I feel like that's kind of like a missed opportunity. If you're going to try and send him down for something, then on those particular cases, concentrating on the fact that he's freaky.
Yeah, it's not going to help the situation.
You know what I mean? It's not going to help the situation. But what I kind of wanted to kind of put to you, and this is like in your most professional opinion, you've dealt with, you know, people that have come from, you know, abusive and toxic situations, you know, domestic abuse, you know, even like physical abuse, mental abuse, even financial, all of the above. When we look at kind of Cassie's whole situation, and we see exactly what, you know, the talk outside of the courtroom has been, like noticing that people are saying or trying to, you know, downplay what she's, you know, gone through by saying, well, you know, no one can get sexually abused, you know, for 11 years, or why didn't she say something beforehand, or, you know, if that were me, I would never.
Yeah.
Like,
there's always a lot of that stuff when you're on the outside looking in.
yeah,
There's always a lot of, well, I would have done this, I would have done that, she should have done X, Y, and Z. And when you're outside and you have the safety of not being in that situation, it's easy to come up with these plans. It's easy to say, I would have done this, or I wouldn't have let X, Y, and Z happen if that person had talked to me. There was a lot of security around, it looks like, in passing or whenever over these years, that stood by and allowed these things to happen through fear of what may happen to them. The thing is, what people don't understand is that for a lot of sexual crimes, it takes a lot for it to even make it to court. It takes a lot. And if the police don't find enough evidence, it can get thrown out.
The conviction rate is quite low.
It's extremely low. So before it even gets to court, there has to be a certain amount of evidence. There has to be a certain amount of how much the survivor has remembered the account of what's happened. And it's not always easy. So sometimes there's survivors sitting there who haven't made it to court. And we have to commend the people that do come forward. So first and foremost, people should be commending her for actually being able to stand there and talk her truth of her experience of what happened to her. And we've seen little clips, and we all know that it weren't great what happened to her. But now we've heard all of this and the forceful nature behind it. And then, you know, when we talk about force, we have to talk about manipulation that comes into play as well, that she would have went through. I'm not sure of the age she was when she first met Diddy. Do you know? I'm
not entirely sure, but something tells me that she might have been, you know, relatively young. Because I remember when she burst on the scene, she would have been probably early 20s, potentially 19. Obviously, fact check that. We don't know. We don't know everything. But I guess to start from somewhere, and I think probably this is probably the best place to start. And you kind of started to speak about it earlier on, but coming forward, right? We hear this a lot when we talk about people that have survived these instances of domestic violence, or the terrible R word and stuff like that. And a lot of people, right, will turn and kind of look at this victim and say, well, you was there for how many years? Why are you only saying something now? Now, in relation to some of the things that you've kind of seen, are you able to kind of break down how that could happen and why it's kind of valid?
It's difficult when you're in a situation, especially if you're in love. You know, if you're in love, if she loved him, and we know that when you are in love, you will allow certain things, good or bad, to happen. You will overlook certain things when you are in love. You will allow people, unfortunately, to take advantage of you. You will potentially not even thinking straight when certain things are happening. So if she was as in love as what it seem to be, it's extremely difficult. And then we've got to add in the financial implications. We've got to add in, at the time, she would have been looking to become famous because she was a singer.
Yeah.
With Diddy, she would have became a lot more famous than if she didn't have him there.
Yeah.
So there are certain points that we have to take into account where he was in control of her career, her life, her everything. I remember reading that they was out in a club and somebody had their head shaved. So the next day, Cassie's had half her head shaved because that was of the request of Diddy.
Yeah.
Not because
she
wanted to do it.
Yeah.
Apparently this was because Diddy wanted her to do it because he's seen somebody that looked good in the club. So that's what happened the next day.
Yeah.
And that was from one of the security guards.
Yeah, and I guess what people are not really considering is those things that you said around almost like compromise, but not a balance. So they love this person. It's advantageous for them to be with that person. The way that their life has kind of changed and it is kind of firmly under the thumb of that person. Getting out or knowing when to get out is a very cloudy thing to try and understand and
It's
fathom.
not easy. I mean, you have to remember that he would have been telling her, don't talk to certain people.
Yeah.
Don't say I'm doing this. Don't say I'm doing that. Or X, Y, and Z will happen to you.
Well, we've seen that with people that are not on Diddy's level. Do you know what I mean?
Happens. It does happen. So you are under a lot of pressure to what's the word I'm thinking? To gratify somebody else's sexual nature and everything. Yeah. And she thought at the time, probably, when the times people are talking about when she should have come forward, she probably thought she was being a perfect partner.
Yeah, for real.
At those times. It's not until you somehow step out of that situation and you look back and you think, well, my new partner doesn't ask me to do any of these things, or he doesn't hit me, he doesn't shout at me, he doesn't... Bloody hell, what I went through. And sometimes it takes that to get the ball rolling for you.
Now, this is where it kind of crosses over a little bit because, yes, maybe when they've left that situation, they've looked back and thought, yeah, that wasn't acceptable, or I don't like that. But then there might be certain aspects that they do look back. So in Cassie's situation specifically, there were times when she was looking at what he's doing and calling him and texting him, realizing that the life that she has now, which is way more peaceful, she's like, well, actually, this might not have been built for me. I miss certain elements, all that nasty stuff we used to get onto, or that other stuff that we used to like, all the things that people have judged him for. There were elements of that she likes. Now, does that do something to invalidate her experience, or is it one of those things where it's probably because of the experience? I know it's a tough question.
Yeah, obviously, only she can answer that, or people in that type of situation.
Yeah.
But obviously, consent is the driving force behind any of this stuff that they was doing. And as we all know, you can change your mind with consent at any stage, at any time. You can consent. You can change that. So she may have consented to a lot of this.
Yeah.
Whether it in the beginning, whether it was coercive in getting her to
get on that
agree.
Page. Yeah.
And then after she was really into it, only she can decide. Well, not decide. Only she can come forward and say whether how much she was into it or not. But it shouldn't affect the outcome of if she said no, that means no.
Yeah, which is, to be fair, this is a conversation that I've had broadly with people because, once again, consent can be given and taken away at any point.
Any point.
Like we've seen it happen with, people that have gone out and they've met someone in a club or whatever, and it's all systems go when you're in there, you leave, you get in the cab. The second that you reach your destination, it's I'm not feeling too good, maybe we shouldn't. The consent was there beforehand and it was all great, but then at that final minute, it's a no. Even closer than that. You know what I mean? Like, close her off. Things are about to happen. Actually, I'm second guessing that. At that point, it's having kind of the the strength to listen and actually see what's happening, read the room, and just be like, you know what, my desires need to take a back shelf because this person has said, no, it's not happening anymore. And some people can't see past that, unfortunately.
No,
and that's a scary thing. Like, and it's almost that's what we're kind of looking at now.
Just to throw in, there is a video short story on consent. It's about tea. So if there's any young people or parents of young people who, it'd be good to watch that. It's on YouTube and it will explain consent. Sorry, what was you saying?
No. I was just saying, like, it can get like that, and in this particular sense, it's like, yeah, maybe there was some things that was consented to, but at the same time, there was still parts where they weren't, and the coercion was evidently strong enough to make her abandon whatever principles or objections and just go along with it. And
yeah, there's lines to everything, isn't there?
Yeah.
And it sounds like he's crossed an awful lot of lines. Yeah. And for her, at whatever stage she decided to get out, you know, fair play to her. You know, throughout all this, what's happened to her, there's clearly some glaring lines where she was a victim at a time and now a survivor. And I'm glad for her that she's been able to come out as a survivor, talk her truth, and still manage to navigate a life. She's pregnant now, she's got a husband, so she's managed to navigate a life and find happiness.
Yeah.
Fair play to her. We can't begrudge her that because she may have consented to some freaky stuff. Consented.
Yeah.
You know, we can't begrudge her for that. And people, unfortunately, online will... So, well, she consented to part of this, so that means she deserved everything. That's not the case.
Yeah, it's not. And I think some of that is also driven by the money element. I mean, one kind of stance that I take, or a principle that I stand on, that I constantly get backlash for all the time, is when people do these civil cases and they are trying to get money from a situation based on something that's happened to them. My thing is, well, if it happened to you, no one can really tell you how to process that or how to get over it. If you get, you know, beaten up and it's within an inch of your life and you say, you know what, I want money. If that helps you sleep better at night after what happened, or if that is actually the reasonable punishment outside of going jail, because really and truly, if someone goes to prison over this kind of stuff, you won't get no money out of that. Yeah, they've gone prison because that's the right thing to do, but at the same time, like, what has that done for your life? In some instances, and some people might put a monetary value on how they move over with their lives, and as people that are not victims of that moment, who are we to determine what that person gets out of that situation to help them feel better or help them actually get on with the rest of their life? If that's the case, go for the money. And then if you really want to go double or nothing after that, then send them to jail, because you can do that. You know what I mean?
You have to remember, though, there's cases where you get nothing.
Yeah.
They don't go to prison, or you don't get any monetary value out of it. And that is part and parcel of these cases. You know, you won't always get justice.
Yeah.
You won't always... And the perpetrator won't always get their comeuppance. And I feel that's why a lot of people generally won't step forward and say and talk their truth. They'll prefer to just leave it, because from what I hear, the process as a survivor is a very strenuous one. It's not easy when they are questioning you. You do have to remember every intimate detail and what you said, what they said, where they touched you with, what clothes, everything.
You have to replay it.
You have to replay it.
And that's tough. And like you said, with the low conviction rate, it's important that you replay all those things, but it's a big ask. Like, I can see why people would suppress certain things, or because they're so shocked about what's really happened, they might almost take it out of context and use something else to detract from what's really happened, to try and almost pump the brakes on what's happening, and just be like, you know what, this is happening very fast. I'm not sure that I want all this to happen, but something was wrong, and something has happened that's wrong that could affect somebody else, not just me. And at that point, you then are burdened with doing what's right for the environment versus just what's right for you.
It does depend on what state you're in at the time.
Yeah.
You know, A lot of people do come forward later on when they're in a much better place to be able to talk about certain things. It's not always at the time where you're able to put yourself through that, because you will be putting yourself through that again, until there has been enough evidence.
Yeah.
So you do have to be in the right place to be able to talk about these things. And sometimes it does take a few years. It does take being around the right people. It does take talking to the right people. It does take that to build yourself back up to being able to do that. You know, so it's not always as easy as what people on the outside looking in think, well, this has happened straight away. You need to. Sometimes that's not the case. You have to move when it's right for you.
Yeah.
You have to do what's right for you. And unfortunately, you can't think of the other at that time.
You can't, yeah.
Hopefully, you will get to that stage where you can step forward. And if you can act there straight away, you know, do what's right for you.
Yeah. And I think kind of taking a step back to, you know, when people consider like when they can leave and when they can't.
Mm-hmm.
And even when they decide to report on this stuff, because what you said was quite important. It's taking that time to know what is right for you and almost planning your exit in a way that keeps you the safest possible. So like when people say this stuff around, well, actually, how can you go this long and not say anything? Or how can you let this happen and only say something 10 years later? Well, how do you know that that person hasn't taken the biggest calculated risk in making sure that they are as far away as possible from that person who has abused them for so long, made sure that their own environment is safe enough so they can deal with the fallout, and then had enough strength to do what they need to do in order to face them head on.
Yeah. The age old saying is you don't know what you don't know. And people, unfortunately, when it comes to these kinds of cases, we will assume, people generally will assume, well, this was years ago, so clearly it didn't happen. That's not always it. That person has had to live with this, what's happened to them for all these years, whether they look like they're having a great time, because that's how, especially in the Diddy Cassie case, that their life would have looked great from outside, you know, but that doesn't mean for her personally that these were great times. We've seen her get beat up on that video.
That's what I mean.
That was probably one of many of those occasions, unfortunately, when she decided to say no or tried to get away or do. Just because the cameras were there that one time doesn't mean those types of altercations didn't happen on numerous occasions.
Yeah. But what I probably will say as well is that, and this is the part where I kind of see that there is a different side to the coin, and even though she's a victim in some things, she might not necessarily, it doesn't mean that she cannot be not be a victim in other things. So there might have been parts of that relationship that she really loved. There might have been parts of those things that the change in her gave her strength to do this or gave her strength to do that, had status she wanted, had money she wanted, had fame she wanted, but at the same time, it was at the cost of something. She had to sell something inside of her in order to have what she had. And even with her, you know, contacting him back when, you know, she's meant to kind of be happy and moved on, you know, seeing people like Young Miami in the same spot that she was in and seeing her get the same treatment and be like, well, that was me and that could have been me. Right, we need to have a conversation because I missed that. It's like, okay, well, at what point do we draw the line between, well, she's not as innocent, but she's still a victim, and knowing that, you know, she's gone through something and it still needs to be validated at the same time?
Well, depending on how toxic the relationship was, you know, it probably didn't start off like that.
Yeah.
You know, it probably was clouds and roses and beautiful
romantic gestures,
everything,
everything.
And then there would have been a time where he felt, you know what, it's time to potentially show the other side of this relationship, the freak-offs, the other bits, the aggressive side, the toxicity. And then potentially that side took over. Now, if she's still on cloud nine with the other part and the toxicity has now started to take over, this is where her judgment becomes clouded and unable to see the truth, because she's still falling for the first person.
Yeah.
Now, whether there was opportunity to get out, again, we don't know the whole ins and outs of that relationship, but they certainly become a lot less until you decide to save yourself and get out of this, because it becomes the norm after a while. Yeah. Because you shouldn't look at another relationship and say, bloody hell, I missed that when they was a bit toxic to that. Oh, that made me... You shouldn't really be thinking that. Because really and truly, you should go speak to somebody about that toxicity that is able to help you navigate to get out of it. Where you see other people's toxicity and then you think, you know what? I'm so glad that I'm not in that, or I'm past that stage and cycle of life now. But for some people who are still in it, or who haven't seek that support to get out of it properly, because you still carry it with you, especially when you are going to date others, you may want that person to be exactly like how Diddy was with his toxicity. Until you're ready to fully move past it. And only you can decide that. And this is why sometimes it takes long to get out. And a lot of people will be thinking and getting it mixed up, because it sounds easy. Like I said, when you're outside looking in, it all sounds easy. But when you're in the midst of it...
it's the hardest thing.
It's the hard. But now look at a relationship. It's total opposite.
It's the opposite. And some might say that is because of the situation she's come out of. Whether she wanted that or not, she's provided that for herself, because in that situation, she's almost found out what she doesn't want. And she knows probably all those little things that connect the dots to make it like that, even a tad bit. Because there could be things that she really, really wanted to take from Diddy's situation and drop it in her current situation. However, she now has seen enough to know that probably some of those things lead to all the things that she doesn't like. So it's like, it's literally night and day.
Yeah.
So, but kind of taking it away from Cassie, I think it's important to understand how men get here too, to put a little bit of accountability on us as males too. And to kind of understand, you know, how, because we see it all the time. Like, we've seen it from the guys that were older, that had status, that were, you know what I mean, driving to the school to pick up their younger girlfriends, and as a result, they ended up being their baby mums, and we thought we didn't know what was going on behind closed doors until they left that situation, and then we really knew what was going on behind closed doors. How do we get here as men? Like, what are we doing that's kind of wrong in this situation?
I think we are glorifying the wrong things.
Okay.
Personally, like you said, there's a part where when you take Diddy into, like, he has had the world in a chokehold from we was in school, maybe longer.
It's true.
You know? And everybody who is anybody, whether they were famous, whether they weren't famous, whether they were millionaires, whatever amount of money there, everybody wanted to party with Diddy.
Yeah.
Everybody wanted to go to one of his parties. Obviously, this was pre-knowing the truth, but a lot of people, everybody across the world wouldn't have turned down a party to go
100%.
And either work with Diddy, party with Diddy, have dinner with Diddy. You would have done it.
You would have done it.
Before this moment, everybody would have done it.
100%. I would have. I was a big fan of Bad Boy Entertainment.
Yeah.
But yeah, go on.
In terms of, we are glorifying the wrong things. So whereas in this day and age, being a good man, or being a nice man, or being somebody who is not workable, but like you listen a lot, you're attentive, and what do they get called in this day and age?
Simps. The word that we try and ban on this show, by the way.
And being a bit toxic.
Yeah.
Having endless amounts of people in your DMs, having people wanting to be around you. We glorify that kind of stuff. It's always being glorified.
The man who has options has everything.
Has everything. And it's until people start looking and changing their views, because there's nothing wrong with being a good man. And this is women as well, in terms of looking for certain criterias. But as a whole, people look money, power, and they respect those traits. You're a nice man. Oh my God, Hez, why would you do that?
Yeah.
Why would you get up every morning and bring your wife to work? Why would you go pick her up? Why have you got flowers? And the people who are telling you this ain't married,
Yeah.
not got kids,
Yeah,
they're not
for
in
real.
that situation. So but this is what I mean. Who is deciding as a whole what should be glorified as traits?
Yeah.
And this is what I mean. If I was to be able to go back and talk to myself, being able to communicate properly,
Yep.
being able to emotionally regulate, being a nice person, being somebody that others want to be around,
Yeah.
there are good skills and traits to have. But nobody doesn't put them on a pedestal the way they should be.
Nah, nowhere near. Like they always say that nice guys finish last,
Nice
when
guys
really
finish last.
nice guys get you through the race of life. And that's the problem, innit? Like not many people understand that when you look at what you actually want from life instead of what you think you want from life based on other people, then you start to get a true understanding of exactly who you are and how you play into a relationship. And then that little thing called teamwork starts to really play a part. And that's another thing. Too many people have defined teamwork as one thing and one thing only, which is what you're saying about glorifying. We've got man A here who is red pill to the core that says a man must protect, provide, and lead, and their version of that is a dictatorship. So it's like it's not the real version of, lead. It's I'm at the top of the pile. I get to shout at you. I get to, because I've got the money. You do what I say.
do what I say, that's
You're
right.
living in my house, so therefore, while I'm outside getting the money, that means that you have to make sure my dinner's ready by this time. That means that when we do have children, 90% of the parenting needs to go to you. All that kind of thing where, I come in and I give him a hug and I give him a present because that's how I show my love, through money and possessions. When really, actually, there's way more to life than any of that. And unfortunately, social media doesn't really tell us that.
No.
You know what I mean? Social media doesn't even represent, the typical household or the typical relationship. It's almost made to sound like it's an awful thing if two people work and pour into a household, which is confusing to me, because if you meet somebody who actually does want to do something for themselves and they are enterprising, and even though they are family orientated, they have goals and aspirations, and you're equally living for goals and aspirations, and you try and build that foundation so you can bring a child in there to learn from the both of you, then how is that a negative thing? The greatest house ever is the house that two people pour into and then create something out of it. So how have we got here? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's
weird to me.
Crazy. And social media has made, I guess, being normal not good enough.
Yeah.
You have to be rich to be able to live a certain lifestyle. You have to be, as a single person, you have to be rich to be dating a certain caliber of women. You have to be a certain look about you to date a certain caliber of man. Everybody's telling you these things. And I imagine that if you talk to these people individually when the cameras ain't running, they've not even fixed themselves.
Yeah.
But they've got money, which is okay. And people want you to see that.
Yeah.
They don't want you to see that they're broken on the inside and they can't manage to have and hold a conversation. Hence why they lead by dictatorship. You do what I, because they can't communicate their feelings properly, unfortunately. But the way is that these cameras are everywhere, and people would prefer to sit and watch those kinds of people get an authority, a level of fame, the money, and live their life vicariously through
other people.
Those types of people as well, rather than, I know I've said it before, is that you have to be managing who you are watching and the content that you are taking in, because sometimes a lot of these people, even though they probably are showing you a lavish lifestyle that to a certain extent is great, but how does that actually make you feel when the when they go through their car park and they've got Lambos and Ferraris and Mercedes G-Wagons and all kinds, and the house of massive houses, and they've got the big pool and the jacuzzi. How does that actually make you feel? Because does that make you sit there and watch it? Wow, I can get that, you know. Or does it make you think, bloody hell, I ain't doing enough and I will never be able to sit and have all that stuff unless I hit the lottery?
It's true though, because really, when it comes to a lot of this content, it is strongly dependent on you knowing who you are. But unfortunately, it preys on the people that don't know who they are, that don't have an identity, don't have a direction, and therefore they're looking to a template and saying, I want that, or I want a part of that. So does that mean that I have to do all of this in order to get there? And maybe that will give me some direction. So it's almost like a lack of self-awareness. Because you're right, there's some people, right, that actually will look at that car garage and think, okay, cool, that's where I want to get to. Now I'm going to have to work harder. I'm going to have to put more hours in at my job. I'm going to have to study so I can do something. And as a result, my revenue will continue to go up. And then hopefully I can be at that level. It's an aspiration, which is great. But then there's some people who lack so much in their lives that have looked at all those things and said to themselves, oh, I've not got that.
Not got that.
Like, I'm not good enough. I'll never be able to get that. Or they look at that person who is 10 stone with abs and is on holiday, flaunting a bikini, and be like, I don't look like that. I'm like a size 12, and even though there's nothing wrong with size 12, they'll be like, I'm a size 12 and I hate this. Like, you know what I mean? Man them that be going in gyms and be like, they've done the hard part of entering a gym so that they can start to, get their body right. They're starting at the beginning. They're walking on a treadmill instead of running. They're not quite learning how the stretches, or the technique isn't where it's supposed to be, but they're trying. And then they see somebody on the internet who's whacking out 50 pull-ups in one, doing backflips and burpees and that, and it's the top of the line, but it's not showing you the journey in a relatable way.
It's easy to tell somebody, you know what, go get money, go get women. They ain't telling you how to do these things.
It's true.
They're not telling you how they've got 6 Lambos and all these Ferraris. They're not telling you a shit because they want to keep you here.
Yeah.
They want to keep you as a fan. They want you around because that's better in their views. That's better in their money.
Yeah.
It's the easiest thing in the world to give that advice. I could talk, go get money.
Yeah.
You know, I could tell people, go get a degree.
I've got one.
It'll be
you know what I mean? Like,
it'll be foolish of me just to say that, but I know how difficult that journey is.
Yeah.
So I would, if anybody wanted to talk to me about, I'm telling you the whole journey in terms of how difficult it was to go get that degree.
Yeah.
A lot of these people would just, I've got money, come and join me.
Selling dreams, isn't it?
Get you some money as well. You can buy a Lambo and, you can be here with me. They ain't telling you how to get here because in reality, they don't want you here because you're going to be potentially taking their money away from
or it. They haven't actually got it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, there's a lot of these people who are borrowing to front that lifestyle, and you know what? Online gave people that platform to do it. You know what? Before it sounds like I'm being judging, I'm not judging anybody. You do what's right for you. You listen to who's right for you. But what I implore people to do is just think about how you feel when you are watching certain people flaunt lavish lifestyle. Does that encourage you to change your life, or does that make you feel sorry about yourself? Yeah. And what I do encourage is that you go and find people that are on a similar journey to yourself and are trying to strive for better and encourage, and because it is difficult out here, no matter what part of life, especially if you haven't got a certain type of money, like certain people in this world do. Life is a struggle.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And I think to kind of bring that message back to what we were talking about before around, how a person like, Diddy could be in that position. Mm-hmm. It's once again, it's kind of who have you learned from? What have you seen in your life that says, all I need to do is get so powerful that no one can tell me anything, so therefore everybody underneath me is now almost like a slave to whatever I want. like putting that, you know what I mean, putting that hold on people so they can't escape. You know, having that level of influence that says, if you cross me, you're blackballed. Like, it's little things like that. And then as it gets stronger and it gets stronger, the arrogance starts to chip in. And it's like, well, actually now you feel that you're untouchable.
Yeah.
No one can even...
Can't tell me nothing.
Yeah, no one can tell you anything. So now you're just doing anything. Like, you've already completed life 10 times over compared to, you know, the me's and you's of the world. So as a result, now I'm just going to just try stuff and nothing is off the table.
The thing is, you're not even trying.
You're just
people
doing
are out
it.
there doing stuff.
Yeah, just
and
doing it.
It's wild, but they feel that they can because they've got a certain amount of money that tells them, I can do whatever the hell I want.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, these people live amongst us who feel that they can do whatever the hell they want. Whether that hurts others, they're not bothered at the time. They're just getting their own kicks from it.
Yeah.
And it is a shame that, unfortunately, everybody's situation in life is different. But there'll be times where there'll be people who feel like they have to do this. For whatever reason, Cassie felt at certain points of that relationship, she had to do and abide by whatever was being said.
Yeah.
And obviously, to bring it to this side of the world, I guess we can look at the Mason Greenwoods of this in terms of how his career is working its way back up because of that video that most of the world seen and how he was conducting himself.
Yeah.
But there is a time where he would have thought, because of my monetary status, I can make you do whatever I want.
Knowing full well you're not going to leave because I'm making too much money. Like, really and truly, I'm not going to let you just sit around and, you know, raise our soon to come child with anybody else. So you're here whether you like it or not. So if I'm having a bad day at the office, then however that comes out is however that comes out. And in some ways, it's terrible because it's not in a healthy way, I suppose. Like, but yeah, it happens everywhere, unfortunately.
It does happen everywhere, and especially in certain parts of, like, if you're a sportsman and you have made a certain amount of money, if you've hit the lotto, if you did, there'll be just times where you just decide that I've waited for this a long time and nobody's telling me nothing. Nobody, not you're not telling me nothing. And I've always felt that too much too soon is a thing. You know, if you become rich, especially if you've had a tough life and you've been without for a long time, and you then just automatically suddenly get a boatload of money, and not only are this one boatload, because your career is going well, the chances are there's going to be several boatloads.
Yeah, for real.
But if you don't know how to conduct yourself and manage yourself properly, you potentially will get into these kind of things. And the thing is, with the Mason Greenwood situation, a lot of people won't admit it, but there'll be men and women up and down the country who have had that kind of Saturday night.
Yeah.
With money or without.
Yeah.
Certainly him having money has made her realise and come back. And however they've decided to rectify things, now they've got a second child, I believe.
Yeah.
And they've rectified. She's decided to accept his apology, and they're both trying to move on.
You have to leave that alone from there.
Fair play to them. You know, that's on them. That is not other people's job to be judge and jury of how they've decided to manage their situation. Whether it was right or wrong, I believe how he conducted himself was wrong.
Yeah.
But she's accepted his apology and took him back. Would she have done this without him having the money? We'll never know.
We'll never know.
We'll never. We can assume. We'll never know.
Because we've seen it when people don't have as much money.
We've seen it.
You're in, sometimes you feel like you're in for life until you're not. So
yeah. So it's more about how if these situations do arise, and again the word is conduct, how you conduct yourself. But a lot of the times people aren't being taught how to conduct themselves when they're in certain situations. And I remember saying it a while ago. I was talking to one of my good friends, Anton Brown, aka should check them out, guys. About how I think it was the Adam Johnson situation.
Yeah.
What he went through. It was like, oh, if there was somebody at the club who they could have spoken to about this, maybe X, Y, and Z wouldn't have happened. But in reality, certain people need somebody to not manage them, but so they can talk, you know what, I'm planning to meet up with a 1.6.
Jesus Christ.
A big age.
Yeah.
And I feel that's okay.
Yeah.
Somebody, you know what? Nah. You shouldn't be. You should know not to do that anyway. But some people, because they feel that they've got enough money just to pay it off, that's all right.
And the lack of good people around
And
them.
the lack of good people around them who are going to say, you know what, as it don't matter the amount of money you've got, whether that ruins my nights out moving forward or ruins you buying me a car or what, I've got to say something to you.
Yo,
but
listen,
not enough people are doing that.
That is a whole different conversation in itself.
Yeah.
Like people that literally are so bothered about their situation and how it's advantageous for them, they forget to be a friend. They forget to be that one sound voice of reason to kind of stop the foolishness from happening. Like everybody's cool when the gravy train is moving. But nobody is cool with making sure that the gravy train don't go off track.
They want to keep it moving. It needs to stay, doesn't it, for some people?
Like it's wild to me, but
those conversations, and obviously the situation he was in, he probably didn't have any people around him like that anyway to have that conversation with. But we was just like, imagine if that person was in the club already, X, Y, and Z. It was just an idea at the time. But I do always feel that when you do have a certain amount of money, there needs to be some kind of coach, mentor, whatever to help you manage and decide whether that's a good idea or not.
Absolutely.
Do you feel that's the best idea? Let's just talk about that idea. What could happen if it goes west?
Exactly. There does understand because there's a lot to lose.
There's a lot to, and he lost his career for it.
Yeah.
Career done. There's no comeback for what he did.
No.
You know, and he was a good footballer in his time.
Yeah, it's true.
Career done.
It's true. It's not worth it. It's not worth it. And that's the thing. Like, even if he did have that responsible person or that person that managed his life and his internal affairs, you know somewhere deep inside that it's wrong if you're keeping it from them.
You know it's wrong.
Or if you're doing things to stop them from knowing.
I guess some people just can't help themselves. And I'm not saying like put that pressure on somebody else to manage you and what you decide. You should first and foremost know what's right and wrong for yourself.
Yeah.
You know, that's the goal. You should know what's right and wrong for yourself. And if you then know that you struggle to conduct yourself, then reach out to somebody and go talk about certain things. Because it might stop you from doing a madness. It might not. Some people are too far gone, but it might do.
There's always a chance, and the only way that you're going to do to that is your magic word is to talk to someone.
Yeah,
you have to say because I'll be honest with you, right? When you're a big man, whether you've lived life and you've got your own resources and all that kind of stuff, there are things, right, that you know are right from wrong, right? Because really and truly, if you think it's right, you're just going to go ahead and you're going to do it and you're not going to think about it, and somebody might have to be the person to tell you that what it is wrong. But there's plenty of instances where people will they'll think about it and they'll have all these thoughts going in their head. What if this? What if that? Because unfortunately, not that many people live under a rock where they don't see any social media, where they don't see news, or they don't see people talking about all these little desires that you've had and put it in the bad category. People have seen that. So as a result, it's like, right, actually, I've heard that this isn't really right. It's rattling around in my head. I'm going to need to actually probably verify it. And if you have that feeling where it's rattling around in your head and you're not sure, that is the perfect time to talk. The perfect time. Because really, we can't tell you, or no one can tell you, that is wrong if you don't even know, or if you're not aware. You're going to go and do it, and then something's going to happen as a result. No one can stop that. No one can see that coming unless they are literally watching you all the time. But if you have that little thought up here, or that little feeling in here, right, and that little rumbling in your belly that says to you, oh, actually, I might need to just reconsider something, then maybe you need to talk about it, because you could end up putting yourself in a situation that you could potentially avoid. So, but yeah, no, with that said, you know what I mean, thoughts and prayers to everybody that's part of that case. And have you got any predictions? Do you think the diddler's gonna...
I think the diddler. I think he will end up in prison or continue, but I don't think it will be as long as what people are thinking he should be in there for.
See, now I don't think he's going to see the inside of a jail cell at all. I think
we think he'll stay on remand until and then out.
Probably. I think that what they've built their case on, unless they come out with something that is like a smoking gun, I don't think that they've done the job that they need to in order to acquit him for to convict him for the cases that he's up for, because he's not on trial for being freaky.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. He's not on trial for potentially being, you know, a little bit forceful. He's on trial because, you know, there's suspicion to be part of a racket and human trafficking.
This just before the forceful bit. Obviously, they've mentioned coercive, and I know that's fairly new with regards to getting sentences. You can get sentenced for control and coercive behaviour. Yeah. So that
they are trying to link that to the human trafficking thing. Yeah. So, like, you know, was he forceful in his nature in getting people across the border to do things and all the rest of it, which, you know, soliciting is illegal still. But yeah, their human trafficking laws are beyond me. They're not what we think they are. Like, it's state lines almost. It's like you could, if, say for example, if I met someone in London, we live in Notts, right? And I say, right, I'll pay for your train ticket to get here. I'll pay for all the dinners. You know, if we go shopping, I'll buy you some stuff. Like, I'll handle the hotel. Like, you ain't got to pay for anything, and, you know, I'll give you a little bit of change to go home with. That is considered as... Sorry, and I think it's important to say, after saying all of that, like, we have sex on the base of that, that is considered over there as a form of human trafficking, because I've essentially solicited sex with someone that I've had to fly in or I've had to bring in from a different state or whatever in order to exercise that act as such.
Does that mean if the person didn't consent to that, then it's trafficking? But what if the person consented to it?
Well, this is the thing, because obviously soliciting is illegal over there, then they are going to consent because there's a cash incentive. So it's, you know what I mean? It's one of them where this is where the coercion part... Yeah,
that feels a bit loopholey, where I'm sure the diddler will have the best...
the best lawyers.
Lawyer, hasn't he? Yeah, so like they'll find holes.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. I do feel it will serve a bit of time, not endless like R. Kelly.
Yeah, he's under the jail where he should be. R. Kelly, the musical genius, yep. He's got the classics that, you know, helped us be here. But Robert Kelly, sicko, mate. Bury him under the jail. For real. Take that as you will, people. But yeah, with that said, once again, thank you again for, you know, locking in and being part of the conversation. 2 weeks from now, on every second Sunday of the month, you know, me and your boy are on 97.5 Kemet FM. Even though it's local lyric radio, if you go on the website, which will, you know, include in the bios and stuff, if you go on the website, we'll be there on the talkback section. So just look out for us there, 9 till 11, every second Sunday of every month. But yeah, hopefully you guys return. Keep an eye out for our Instagram. Our tags will also be in this video because our amazing engineer will make it so. And one of these days we might have to you know, bring in a topic where we might hear from the amazing poetic Sparkles herself, because sometimes I look over and I see that she's dying to say something.
We see a few nods.
We see
ready
a few
to say
nods.
something.
Especially because yes, we are men. We try not to speak on behalf of women or act like we know what women are thinking. She's the woman in the room as poetic Sparkles is. So if she feels like she needs to say something, we will definitely make that happen. But with all said and done, thank you very much again. And, you know, we try and, you know, unlearn everything so that we can learn new things and become better people on the other end. So, mindful men, love and peace.
See you later, guys.
See you in a bit.